Newshour first.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Imagine yourself living in your own state as a refugee, driven out of your own house, your shelter trampled upon by bulldozers, and you being forced to relocate with your families because someone who enjoys the patronage of the high and mighty in the state had set their eyes to grab your land. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the Mahadalits in Jharkhand's Palamu are living this trauma inflicted upon them by a Muslim mob led by Mukhtar. Homes of 50 Hindu families have been razed to the ground, their temples bulldozed, and they have been chased away. The state, instead of acting against the mob, has promised them to temporarily rehabilitate them. 48 hours and counting, these people, these Mahadalits, are homeless, shattered, and helpless. Even women were not spared. They were abused, thrashed, and warned of dire consequences if they raised their voice. Take a look at this report from the epicenter in Palamu.
ईदगाह की जमीन इस पे किसी पे नोटिफाइड नहीं है।
यह ईदगाह की जमीन नहीं है और यह मदरसा का जमीन है।
ये जीएम लैंड है।
जी यह जीएम लैंड है।
परिवारों का ये भी आरोप है कि शिवलिंग तोड़ा गया, मंदिर तोड़ा गया, उनके हाथ जोड़ते हैं।
यह देखने वाली बात है। यहाँ देखिए तुलसी का पौधा वहाँ पड़ा हुआ है, शिव जी का पूजा करते हैं।
इनकी ये शिवलिंग की पूजा करते थे। यहाँ पे जो है पूरा ये जो है तुलसी का पौधा एक मंदिर बना रखा है।
सनातन धर्म में आस्था का केंद्र है। वो पत्थर को ही पूजते हैं और भगवान मानते हैं।
ये भी तोड़ा गया बिना।
जी उसे भी
वो ये कह रहे हैं कि हम हाथ जोड़ते रह गए, हम हाथ जोड़ते रह गए।
जेसीबी लगा करके तोड़ा गया।
ये बताइए कि जब बुलडोजर लाया गया, जेसीबी लाई गई, आप सबके घर तोड़े गए?
इस्राइल मुखिया घर तोड़वाए हैं साहब। इस्राइल मुखिया खड़ा होकर इस्राइल मुखिया घर तोड़वाए हैं।
की बात है, परसों की बात है।
परसों रोज की बात है सर, कल सांझ के बात है साहब। कल तक लेटेस्ट भी वहाँ चला है साहब। सर वहाँ के मियाँ थे, मुफ्तदार डीलर थे सर, जनक थे सर, और गोविंद पाल थे, और वहाँ के।
और क्या कहा गया आपसे? ये जमीन आपकी नहीं है, कहा क्या गया?
रसूल मियाँ सर।
क्या कहा क्या गया आपसे? क्यों तोड़ रहे हैं आपके मकान?
कह रहा है कि उन लोग बोल रहा है पूरा मियाँ समाज की यहाँ नहीं रहना है, भागो यहाँ से।
The BJP MLA has blamed the Soren government for its appeasement that has led to the Muslim mob terrorizing the Mahadalits with impunity. He says that such elements can only be emboldened by the state's silence. Listen in.
ये जो सरकार वर्तमान सरकार है, हेमंत सरकार है, जिहादियों को बढ़ा दिया है। हर एक जगह जहाँ देखिए अंकिता कांड, तो फलना जगह ई कांड, तो चतरा कांड, और यहाँ भी कांड जो है बहुत दुखद समाचार है। इन लोगों को जमीन देंगे 5 से 10 डिसमिल और अम्बेडकर आवास बनाएंगे, और उसके बाद इन लोग को भोजन व्यवस्था सारा चीज हम लोग करेंगे, पढ़ाई की भी व्यवस्था करेंगे।
But what's really appalling is the silence of the lobby on this blatant attack on Mahadalits. They accuse Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath of unleashing bulldozers against Muslims, but have maintained a stoic silence when it comes to atrocities on Hindus. When the UP administration demolished the house of the main conspirator in the Prayagraj riot case, Owaisi thundered that bulldozers were being used against a particular community. When properties of those who were involved in the Kanpur riots were razed, the PFI came out and said that homes of protesters are being bulldozed to silence a single minority community. When the homes of 2 rioters in the Saharanpur case were destroyed, Akhilesh Yadav came out and said that peaceful protesters are being targeted. They are at the forefront of crying Islamophobia, but not a word on Palamu horror from them. And that, ladies and gentlemen, brings me to the legitimate question on the Newshour tonight. Bulldozers in Yogi's UB are anti-Muslim, but are they secular in Hemant Soren's Jharkhand? That's the question and the debate on the other side.
You're watching the News Hour first. Debate number 1 on Times Now. Super Prime Time.
And joining me tonight, Vinod Bansal, national spokesperson of the VHP, Tehseen Poonawalla, political analyst, Professor Atiq Ur Rehman, also political analyst. But my first question goes to Dr. Anand Ranganathan, author and scientist. Dr. Anand Ranganathan, I want to ask you, Mahadalits in Jharkhand, in a state where the Jharkhand Mukti Morcha and Congress are in alliance, have been thrown out of their land. Their houses have been bulldozed. Their temples have been destroyed. But not one tweet that has come out from the Congress party which says it is the Messiah of Dalits in this country. It is the Messiah of the downtrodden in this country. Not one word for them. While they are busy protecting their MLAs, taking their booze along with them and going to Chhattisgarh to camp out there, nobody is worried about these Mahadalits, 50 families which have been thrown out of their house and their houses have been razed to the ground by bulldozers. I want to ask you, Dr. Anand Ranganathan, why is there such duplicity on these issues?
Good evening, Navika, and good evening to all my co-panelists. Navika, let it be known that this phrase Jai Bhim, Jai Meme is as fictional and as fairy tale a phrase as India is a secular country. You know, in this country, you can attack a Dalit, you can lynch a Dalit, and if a Muslim mob does it, it is considered a suicide, not a murder. But if it was the other way around, if I were to turn it around, it would not only be a murder of the victim, but also of democracy and justice. This is how this gangrenous cabal of propagandists have twisted the narrative. This is how. They have been silent, Navika, on more than 190 Muslim mob attacks on Hindus, Dalits and non-Dalits over the past 3 years. Including Bharat Yadav, who was lynched after being called a kafir, including in Ranchi, same place in Jharkhand where a Muslim mob segregated, Navika, yes, segregated bus passengers based on their religion before wanting to set it on fire, including vandalizing a temple in Delhi while chanting Allahu Akbar and Nara Takbir, including lynching poor Gangaram because he dared to file a police complaint when his daughter was abducted, including going on a ransom and murderous rampage in Bangalore over alleged blasphemy by a Dalit, including breaking a Ambedkar statue, running amok with courts, trashing Dalit families after they objected to a girl, Dalit girl, Sarita, being assaulted by a Muslim, including nearly lynching a Dalit, Jayanti Bhatti, for daring to wear a Pathan suit. Can you believe it? Threatening to kill him if he wears the Pathan suit again. Navika, none of these attacks elicit any outrage. Right from the fake church attacks narrative and running selective hate trackers to multiple stories of fake Jai Shri Ram slogan triggering, they have perfected selective outrage. So we know who Akhlaq was, who Junaid was, but do we know who was Banu or Dalit Khitaram Bhil or Savant Rathod or Vidhu Jain or Ayub or Farooq or Bharat? So while Jai Meme is unconditional, Jai Bhim is conditional upon the perpetrator not being a meme. We have seen this play out almost every day since 2014 by these gangrenous selectivists who claim they speak truth to power, and convince you that this was not a communal hate crime. So what qualifies as a communal hate crime, Navika? Now that the media has its own judgment for it, the mob didn't know that the victim was a kafir or a Dalit, or that whole family or group of families were Dalits. Or are you going to demarcate their ire into religion and non-religion components? Very briefly, Navika, take the case of Palghar. The ready identification of a saffron-clad sadhu is not enough. What if instead the victim was a skull-cap-wearing, sherwani-clad, bearded Maulana brought out by the UP police and gifted to the lynchers with a BJP minister looking on? Would the media still have maintained it as a non-communal crime? Hell no, Navika, just 10 seconds. You cannot cure these propagandists. This is the lesson we've learned since 2014, Navika. They are like a rupt beach. Their every drop of blood response more of the same. You cannot cure them, you can only expose them.
I want to ask you, Tehseen Poonawalla, is democracy not dead today? You have no time to tweet, you have no time to raise your voice, and this is the Congress party which actually stands up for the rights of the Dalits and minorities in this country. But if it is a minority which is going against the Mahadalits, there is stoic silence. I want to ask you, Tehseen Poonawalla, where is your conscience tonight when the government of Jharkhand, which should have been looking after the Mahadalits, which should have been solving the crime of Ankita, is today sitting in Raipur because they have their cartons of booze with them, and therefore they can relax there, even as they say there is an Operation Lotus that's on. What about this Operation Bulldozer in Jharkhand? You have nothing to say on that, Tehseen Poonawalla?
We have a lot to say on that, Navika ji, but at the beginning, let me wish all my fellow panelists and all you viewers a very, very happy Ganesh Chaturthi. May God, Lord Ganesh, the Lord of prosperity and good beginnings, give all of us wisdom not to spread such communal hate in our country, because these are the facts of the matter in Jharkhand. The Jharkhand government, under Tehseen Poonawalla versus Union of India Supreme Court orders, passed a mob violence law. That law that would have prevented this incident has not been signed by the governor of the country, of Jharkhand, obviously on instructions of Mr. Amit Shah ji or Mr. Modi ji. Incidentally, Mr. Amit Shah ji in Parliament said, we don't require a law for mob violence, despite the Supreme Court saying so. Anand Ranganathan, my dear friend, who I want to congratulate for his recent research work, forgets that in my case, I cited examples of Hindus being lynched by Muslims, including Ayub Pandit. Nobody stood up to support me. Amit Shah said in Parliament, we don't need a law. In Palghar, Anand Ranganathan, it was BJP people involved in the mob violence. So the question is, everywhere there's mob violence, why is there a BJP hand? Now let's come to this case. Unlike Sonbhadra, where the weakest and the poorest of our fellow citizens were shot dead, here the police in Jharkhand not only protected them, the government immediately rehabilitated them. There is a land dispute. This is not a government that has gone and bulldozed people's homes like Aditya Naji. This has happened by a mob. Wrong. But the government has protected them, temporarily rehabilitated them, and will permanently rehabilitate these Mahadalits. What is happening in Uttar Pradesh? In Sonbhadra, Priyanka Gandhi Wada and the opposition was arrested. Media's phones were tapped, not allowed to go to Sonbhadra to give justice to people who were shot dead. Please do not sit here and compare the two. Jharkhand, even from Raipur, is better administrated than Uttar Pradesh, which is a shame.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Tall claims coming from Mr. Tehseen Poonawalla. And Anand Ranganathan, he says the Mahadalits cannot be looked after simply because the mob violence bill has not been passed by Parliament. You mean the existing laws make the government so hapless and the police so hapless that they can't look after people who decimated the houses of these Mahadalits?
Precisely. And here, Navika, please allow me just 30 seconds, because while I applaud, and I have applauded beforehand, Tehseen knows this, my good friend, I've applauded that he had also mentioned about the Muslim mob going after Hindus and Hindu hate attacks. He has done it, one of the very few ones. That's why I admire Tehseen. But here, Tehseen, I have a simple question to ask, just to add on to what Navika has asked. Is there any Indian law in the IPC that does not take care of mob violence? Yes or no? It's a simple question, my friend.
No, mob violence is not defined in the CRPC. Unfortunately, it isn't. Therefore, there isn't a specific law, but there are laws to deal with mobs coming in. I agree with that, but mob violence is not.
Sorry to interrupt you. So what Navika says is absolutely right.
There are laws.
No. Tehseen, 1 second.
Yeah,
what Navika has said, please answer her question. What your excuse that because what you had requested, that law has not been passed, so what is happening to Mahadalits is excusable. I'm sorry, Tehseen, you're a good friend, but what you're saying out here is totally unacceptable. Sorry.
It's unexcusable. If you may please allow me to clarify, I'll just take 10 seconds. My law would have been preventive. This is remedial. However, those people who have attacked will face the full consequences of the law.
When, sir? It's been 48 hours. It's been 48 hours. The women and children do not have a roof over their head while the government is, while the government is on a picnic in Raipur, and you're saying it will be done after a month, after 2 months, after the government survives, after an election. You know, there can't be a timing for this. And Mr. Bansal,
I'll explain that to you.
No, I'm getting in Mr. Bansal. Mr. Bansal, जब कानपुर में राइट्स हुए और बुलडोजर चला तो बहुत दर्द हुई. जब प्रयागराज में राइट्स हुए और बुलडोजर चला तो बहुत दर्द हुई. आज वही बुलडोजर, इतना बड़ा बुलडोजर इनको दिख नहीं रहा, नजर नहीं आ रहा, क्योंकि जवाब नहीं है, क्योंकि ओप्रेसर एक कम्युनिटी है जिनसे इनको वोट चाहिए. क्या यही कहानी नहीं है पलामू की?
नहीं, सिर्फ इतना नहीं, सिर्फ इतना ही नहीं है नाविका जी, इससे आगे भी है. आप देखिए कि स्टोरी बड़ी भयानक और भयंकर है. पलामू वो क्षेत्र है जहाँ पर के जनजाति समुदाय की बहुतायत होती है, और पूरा झारखंड बनाता किस लिए? जनजाति समुदाय के उत्थान के लिए, उनकी संस्कृति, उनकी धरोहरों की रक्षा करने के लिए. आज वो जनजातीय समुदाय जो है, जिहादी समुदाय हावी है जनजाति समुदाय पर, और ये झारखंड को जनजाति समुदाय का झारखंड होना चाहिए था, वो जिहादियों का झारखंड होता जा रहा है. एक के बाद एक लगातार घटनाएं घट रही हैं. नाविका जी, आपको तो पता है सारा रांची हो, पलामू हो या कहीं और हो, आप देखिए लगातार लफ्जियात की घटनाओं, उत्पीड़न की घटनाओं. अब ये महादलितों के ऊपर जो महाअत्याचार जो हुआ है, इसने तो सारी पराकाष्ठा ही खत्म कर दी. आप देखिए 48 घंटे में अगर सरकार ने कुछ किया है तो ये किया है. आप देखिए कि पुलिस वहां पर गई और पुलिस को भी मार के भगा दिया, और वहां पर जो गांव में गए पुलिस और वहां के लोगों को लेकर के रिहेबिलिटेट करने के लिए, बातचीत करने के लिए, वो समुदाय बात करने को भी तैयार नहीं है. आप देखिए उनके सामने पुलिस सरेंडर कर रही है, और दे आर अटैकिंग ऑन द पुलिस एज वेल एज द महादलित्स. आप मजाक की बात ये है, आप देखिए कि वो जो मॉब है, जो मुस्लिम मॉब है, दैट इज बीइंग लेड बाय मुस्लिम लेडीज. कमाल की बात है. पीछे बैकएंड में सपोर्ट करने वाले इस्लामिक जिहादी हैं, जो आतंकी तत्व के लोग हैं, और आगे कर दिया वही बच्चों को और महिलाओं को. ये जो एक संस्कृति नई विकसित हो रही है इस्लामिक जिहादी समुदाय में, ये बड़ी बेहद खतरनाक है कि आप बच्चों को, महिलाओं को आगे कर दो और जिहाद के लिए आगे उकसाते रहो उनको. आप देखिए कि ये जो है, ये जो कानून की बात कर रहे हैं माननीय कांग्रेस के जो रिप्रेजेंटेटिव बैठे हुए हैं, इनसे मैं पूछना चाहता हूं, क्या देश के अंदर पिछले 70 सालों में कोई कानून नहीं था? वो क्या एंटी SC/ST लॉ इज नॉट एबल टू डील विद ऑल दोज सिचुएशंस? यहां तो कई सारे कानून की एक साथ धज्जियां उड़ रही हैं भाई. आप देखिए कि एंटी टेरर लॉ इस पर लागू होना चाहिए. मैं कहता हूं एंटी SC/ST लॉ का लागू होना चाहिए. यहां पर महिलाओं बच्चों का उत्पीड़न जिस तरह से हुआ है, मैं कहता हूं इसमें जो है, ये जो बाल आयोग और हमारा महिला आयोग, इनको भी संज्ञान लेना चाहिए. झारखंड में लगातार इस तरह की घटनाएं घट रही हैं. हिंदू समाज 2म दर्जे का नागरिक बनता चला जा रहा है, और जिहादी गतिविधियां तेज गति के साथ बढ़ी हैं. जब से आपने सुना था कि झारखंड के विधानसभा के अंदर एक मस्जिद बनाई गई थी, उसके बाद तो लगातार खबरों का अंबार लग गया कि वहां तो सरकारी स्कूलों में फ्राइडे को छुट्टी होने लगी, सरकारी स्कूलों में जो प्रार्थना पर प्रतिबंध लग गया. सरकारी
all right, Tehseen wants to come in. Tehseen, 30 seconds to you before I get in Atiq Ur Rehman. 30 seconds. 30 seconds to you.
I want your viewers to know one thing. In the Jharkhand Assembly, no masjid was constructed. Yes, a prayer room was put aside, but there was no masjid constructed, and on national television, lies will not be tolerated. I am sorry.
Why the namaz
I'm sorry,
room
that's not a masjid.
What is
that's
the
a prayer room.
The namaz room.
It was called the namaz room. It was not called the prayer room.
My dear sir,
it may have been called anything. Can I please be allowed?
No, what do you mean by a namaz room is not a prayer room?
Keep quiet or allow me to clarify.
Dr. Anand Ranganathan,
allow me to clarify.
A namaz room and a prayer room is the same thing.
I have not been able to clarify. I have not been able to clarify. Yes, a namaz room / prayer room where people of any faith. One second. People of any faith could pray. It was called a namaz room. I don't dispute it. It was not a masjid.
What for the masjid is there? Masjid is only means for namaz. And where the namaz is performed, it is masjid.
You could have your any other faith.
Why you are asking about the masjid?
Anand and me could go and meditate. It was not a specific religious room. Yes, it was called a namaz room. I don't dispute it. It was not a masjid. I object to this.
It was called a namaz room, but people of all faiths can go there. Dr. Anand Ranganathan.
Yes, Navika. Yeah, Tehseen, please.
Sure, Anand. Sure.
Tehseen.
Sure, Anand.
Yeah.
Sure, please.
Thank you. Navika, I won't take more than 30 seconds because what I want to say is very important. you see there are people with agenda who are running and fixing the narrative. How do we expose that? How do we correct it? We can only correct it using data, concrete data, because selectivity has gone to such an extent, and I'm giving you examples. These are reports by Times of India. Muslim barbers refuse to give Dalits a haircut. Let me quote, if Dalits take haircut, the towels become dirty. This is in Moradabad village. There are so many instances like this in villages. So, you have to cite these instances, Navika, because otherwise these selectivities, they will take it to such an extent that they will say only Hindus are discriminating. Whereas there is equal discrimination by Muslims on Dalits as well. Nobody knows this because it never comes into the news. It never elicits any outrage.
Well, I want to get in, Mr. Atiq Ur Rehman. Mr. Atiq Ur Rehman, NCRB data shows that Jharkhand has recorded the second highest number of cases under the SC/ST Preventions of Atrocities Act for the third consecutive year, 2019, 2020 and 2021. So Dalits are being cornered in the state of Jharkhand. That's a dubious distinction that Jharkhand has. Apart from that, and I don't want to make this religion based, but the fact is that if bulldozers in Uttar Pradesh are not being looked at through the lens of law and order, they are being looked at as Yogi's bulldozers, which is out to target the Muslim community, then why should the same not be seen in Jharkhand, where the Muslims are using bulldozers to bring down the houses of the Mahadalits? Who's making it communal? Are people like Mr. Asaduddin Owaisi making it communal, and therefore shouldn't they be asking what's going on in Jharkhand today and answering those questions?
Navika ji, in my position as a researcher on Islamic studies, I should warn all those people, the trustees of madrasas or masjids, the caretakers of any of the religious bodies, that if they are usurping their powers under the patronage of the state, they will be dealt with very, very harshly by Allah, and that is pronounced very widely in the Quran, that no devotion to Allah can be bereft of either righteousness or grace or dignity shown to the people of the other faiths. And the people of the other faiths are described in the Quran as dhimmis. And Prophet Muhammad have guaranteed that the non-Muslims, the dhimmis, if they are tormented by the Muslim community, it will be the Prophet on the day of judgment who will be guarding their interest. So any of the trustees or the madrasas, if they are trying to impart religious education, Islamic education, and they are usurping powers by either they are tormenting these downtrodden people, they are trying to get their land, Allah won't accept their devotion. Imparting such religious Islamic education won't be accepted. They are fooling themselves. Under the state patronage, if they are doing so, even if they are harshly dealing, they will have to give their due share. And not only due share, they have no right over such land. They cannot establish a religious structure, a Islamic seminary on such a land if you are usurping powers of the downtrodden.
Atiq Ur Rehman, very good philosophy that you have enunciated, but will you condemn the fact that there was a mob in Palamu that razed not just homes but also temples of the Mahadalit community that was residing there over the last 2 years? You haven't condemned that. You have spoken as if you're giving examples of something that happened on Mars.
Is a very, very serious subject.
Navika ji, he will condemn. He will condemn.
The Mahadalits and Dalits, we know the downtrodden, social stage of them.
So are you condemning? And are you saying this is the failure of the Jharkhand Mukti Morcha's government and the Congress, which is in absentia, letting the situation to go on?
No, I am not concerned with the politics of the state. If under the patronage of the state it is being done or bereft of it. Muslims cannot usurp the downtrodden or any of the non-Muslims.
But my friend, those houses have been destroyed. Those temples have been destroyed. Do you condemn it? Do you condemn it?
100%. Not only condemnation, but it's punishable. Not only under
विनोद बंसल जी, आज आतिक उर रहमान ने सारे स्टीरियोटाइप्स बस्ट कर दिए और उन्होंने कहा है कि ऐसी जमीन किसी को रास नहीं आएगी क्योंकि इसका हिसाब देना पड़ेगा अल्लाह को कयामत के दिन। वो सही कह रहे हैं, लेकिन ये हिंदू मुस्लिम करके हमने क्या बैटल लाइंस जी जवाब दीजिए आप।
नाविका जी, मैं पूछना चाहता हूं, देखिए टीवी चैनल की डिबेट में बैठ करके चिपड़ी बातें करना, इस्लाम को महामंडित करना, महादलितों के, देखिए तो ये तो इनकी फितरत में है। लेकिन मैं एक बात पूछना चाहता हूं बड़ी सिंपल, कुरान में काफिर की डेफिनेशन क्या है और काफिर के साथ क्या करना चाहिए ये जरा बता दें। कुरान की एक आयत है जिसके बारे में सबको पता है, इनको भी पता है। आखिरकार वो जो है ये कहते हैं कि पैगंबर साहब के लिए बनी थी, लेकिन वो आज भी एप्लीकेबल है और उसी आयत की वजह से लोगों में ये सब फसाद हो रहे हैं। आखिरकार उस पर कुछ प्रकाश डालें और वो आयत कब तक रहेगी ऐसी, मुझे बताएं, क्या वो ठीक है? क्या इन्होंने एक बात तो कही लेकिन दूसरी बात नहीं कही कि काफिर क्या है, काफिर कौन है।
सब लोगों के हाथ ऊपर उठ रहे हैं। आतिक उर रहमान पहले, फिर तहसीन और फिर आनंद रंगनाथन आपके पास आ रही हूँ। आतिक उर रहमान साहब जवाब दीजिए।
Navika ji, I will refer Maulana Abul Kalam Azad's book, The Tarjuma al-Quran for Vinod Bansal ji, in which he has described who is a kafir. Kufr, which means denial. Volume 1, page 83-85, note down कर लीजिए। विनोद बंसल जी, आप हमेशा ये बात मुझसे पूछा करते हैं। And Navika ji, I will also quote Surah 16 verse 125. Prophet is advised to use persuasion with grace.
एक बार में एक दूसरे के ऊपर ना बोले, एक दूसरे के ऊपर ना बोले। बंसल जी, आतिक उर रहमान बोल रहे हैं, वो बोल लें, उसके बाद मैं आपको मौका दूंगी। आतिक उर रहमान साहब।
मौलाना अबुल कलाम आजाद की नाम आप नोट कर लीजिए। तर्जुमा अल कुरान वर्स 125 चैप्टर 16 says prophet is advised to use persuasion with grace, call all to accept the way of the Lord, but do not do it with persuasion, adopt ways that are gracious, for your Lord knows best who strays from his path। बंसल जी सुन रहे हैं आप? And the kafirs are not my Hindu brethren. The Kafirs were the Makkan people who plotted to kill Prophet Muhammad. He had to migrate because of their atrocities. Those were the Kafirs, the pagan Arabs.
Bansal ji,
say something.
नहीं, what is the meaning of kafir today? That was the definition that time. You have told this thing so many times. But why this kafir word is still exists in the Quran? And why this is being preached by the Devband Madrassas to have atrocities against the non-believers? Why they are being killed? और आप मुझे बताइए, इस्लाम के नाम पर जो हत्याएं हो रही हैं, इस्लाम के नाम पर जो आतंकवादी संगठन चल रहे हैं,
बिल्कुल
वो तो उसी के कारण चल रहे हैं।
कोई भी रिलीजियस स्क्रिप्चर ये नहीं दिखाता जो आज हम सड़कों पर देख रहे हैं। ये हम जानते हैं कि कुरान में ऐसा नहीं लिखा है कि आप महादलितों के साथ इस तरह करिए। पर आनंद रंगनाथन, is Atiq Ur Rehman's reading out of the old books and old scriptures enough to describe the situation today?
Navika, I must confess, I am beginning to like my good friend Mr. Atiq Ur Rehman. I hope he wouldn't mind that. The fact of the matter is that it goes beyond my applause for him, because he is, and I am not being facetious here, he is actually 1 in 2 billion. He is alone. His interpretation right now, let me give you an example. He very correctly says that in Quran it is written, Bansalji, in Quran it is written that Allah has commanded righteousness for the disbelievers and the unbeliever. Quite rightly, it is there. But when I also quote the things that Allah has commanded and ordered to be done against the disbelievers, Mr. Atiq Ur Rehman says, no, those disbelievers are of that time. But when he wants to quote selectively the good things that are supposed to be done for disbelievers, he is there saying that disbelievers are for all time. So my question to him is, when Allah says be kind to disbelievers, why is he discounting the fact that those disbelievers against whom Allah says be righteous and kind are also disbelievers of that time, not of this time? Here is the hypocrisy. He only quotes the good righteous verses of the Quran. He disregards all those verses that command death and worse for the disbelievers.
Well, Atiq Ur Rehman, I don't want to get into the Quran, what it says. No religion ever teaches anybody to displace, to kill, to trouble, people of whichever faith they are. So Atiq Ur Rehman, tonight I want to ask you, and this is a specific question. Please do not get into, a philosophical discussion on what the Quran says and how people are behaving today. I just want to ask you, what has happened in Palamu? Shouldn't that be an eye-opener that all is not well even within the minority community, especially when they behave like this? So therefore, religion should be removed when a crime takes place, an act of terror takes place. You cannot bring in religion into that discussion, and therefore, if bulldozers go into the house of somebody to demolish the house of rioters, then it cannot be that it is targeting a certain community, just like you are not willing to call it the same in Palamu.
And why his Quran is not being preached in
Navika ji, to be very, very prudent,
why this Quran
we have to accept that we are not living in India as Muslims alone, as Hindus alone. We are guided only and only by the Constitution and the IPC. My Quran, my scriptures, and also the Hindu scriptures are best to be studied and learned and be claimed within my four walls of the house. This is my understanding. My religion is
how many people in your community go with the same understanding, Mr. Atiq Ur Rehman? Can you also
2 billion. That is why it's 1 in 2 billion.
IPC sanctions against them. If they do not believe in the IPC and the Constitution, it's punishable.
Well, Tehseen Poonawalla, so here you are not in consonance with what Atiq Ur Rehman says. He says the IPC section should be applied to them. You are still waiting for a mob violence bill to be okayed. I want to ask you, Tehseen Poonawalla, right now, even the minority community doesn't think that your appeasement is worth even the paper that it is written on.
That's not what I want to talk about. First of all, you're completely misquoting me, ma'am. I am absolutely clear. Listen, I can't do this debate because every time I come after a long time, every time I speak, somebody interrupts. So you either allow me the respect to speak or you don't.
Make your point,
Thank you.
Tehseen.
Thank you. Then please ask him to keep quiet. No, not you, Anand. Not you. I didn't mean. Look, there are two things here. I absolutely did not say that the IPC does not apply. I absolutely did not say the IPC does not apply. I said, had that bill come in, there would have been preventive measures. Of course, they will be prosecuted under the relevant provisions today. But there's something deeper that I want to say, and it's something that I want to say from my heart. So please allow me the grace to say. Every single time that I come on a lot of channels, and I have a lot of respect for Anand, yes, the Quran is quoted. Some of it is quoted selectively to reflect things that are not absolutely true. The interpretation of the tarjuma of the Quran is done from time to time by the leaders of the community, and the Quran says something very categorical. Forget about punishment and all, that the constitution of the country must be supreme. When you say, or when Mr. Bansal says that how many Muslims follow that, Muslims of this land only and only bow before the constitution. And if you believe in the Quran or you believe in the Sharia, you have no choice but to believe in the constitution about that. Let me make it extremely clear. Number two, and let me be very, very clear. There is no appeasement. If Muslims, as Anand said, have boycotted Dalits, they should be criminally penalized. If Muslims are mistreating anybody, forget Dalits, anybody including a Brahmin, they should be treated by the relevant provisions of the law. No if, no but. All I'm trying to say...
Vinod Bansal ji, both Atiq Ur Rehman and Tehseen Poonawalla, if you heard their discussions, if you heard their points, if you heard their arguments, are talking about if this happened, then action should be taken. 48 hours later, are they not sure that this has happened? Or is this the benefit of doubt that is being extended to a certain political party, to a certain community, which is not extended to Yogi Adityanath in Uttar Pradesh? I want to ask you. They are only talking about if this has happened, then this can happen. There is no way they are accepting कि हाँ ये हुआ है.
डेफिनेटली देखिए नविका जी, दो बातें बड़ी महत्व की हैं. आप चाहे उनके अपने अतीक उर रहमान की बात करें या इन दूसरे महाशय की बात करें, दोनों के केस में एक कंडेमनेशन तो आया किसी तरह से. लेकिन मैं ये कहना चाहता हूं, क्या दोनों के लोग कहीं वहां पहुंचे? क्या अतीक उर रहमान और उनके जो इस्लामिक स्कॉलर्स हैं, तथाकथित जो मुस्लिम उलेमा हैं, कांट दे गो टू पलामू एंड एजुकेट देम दैट दे आर गोइंग अगेंस्ट इस्लाम?
सन्नाटा, नील बटे सन्नाटा. Well, I'm running out of time on this debate. Anand Ranganathan, I will have to indulge you on topic number 2 tonight, but we leave it at that. It cannot be selectivism that will settle this case.
The News Hour first. We'll be right back after the break.